Alright, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Baron, and yes, I'm flying my Beaufighter Mk, and we are over Berlin right now, which, by the way, is probably the best historical battle mission, I think, for the British to get today's daily tank task, or basically to hope that we get picked for the closed beta test. And today's challenge is to kill 50 ground targets in arcade mode, or alternatively 25 in historical, or 5 in full real battle. I think the quickest way, if you were a good full real battle pilot, would be to probably knock them out in, I would guess, maybe one. I think you could reasonably get 5 ground targets in full real battle, but I think AAA is a little more accurate, but I digress. Since we are going for the historical battle mode, I'll kind of tell you why I decided to go HB instead of arcade. My thought was that in arcade, there's, generally there's about 30 ground targets, and you have to assume that everyone is going for them. So I thought, I might only be able to get 10 ground kills a game, what I was thinking. So I decided to go for HB, and you may be thinking, well, if you went historical battle, the queue times for the British would probably be pretty time prohibitive in that you could be waiting for a couple minutes at a time. But there is an event going on right now called Operations, whereby any team can play against any team, so that should alleviate queue times considerably if you went for the event route using Operations. Now, I played 3 games, so it took me 3 games to do this challenge. However, had I gotten Berlin first, when you see the results of this map, I would have only needed to do 2. Because this battle right here was just pretty insane. A mix of luck and a mix of matchmaking. Like when you look right there, the matchmaking showed, I think, everything but 2 players on my team were Beaufighter Mk, which basically means bullet sponges, and we were going against the Russians. And it seemed that the majority, like where I was way behind enemy lines here, and basically my style was, you can kind of see that I pick a target, but I immediately look for the next target, so I already know where I want to go, because my thought was at any time someone could be jumping on me, and I want to, when shit hits the fan, I want to know where I need to go to get my next ground kill. But surprisingly, not once during this map was I touched or even looked at, it seemed, by a Rusky fighter. But I flew 3 maps, 2 of which were Malta, and I'll show one of which, the not as good one. I got 7 kills the first time and 3 kills the second. So when you think averaging 5 kills, that would be 5 historical battle games, which I think was a little bit long for what I was hoping for. So I'm kind of getting a feel of what's going on in the map. I'm seeing everyone multiple kilometers away from me, just leaving me to find these chains of AAA. Another interesting thing was, I think I was flying low enough, and these houses may have been blocking line of sight. I'm not really sure how it works for this AAA. But AAA never even opened up on me. So it's just like a truly blessed game right here. Really kind of interesting. Rooftop flying right here over Berlin. It almost looks like scraping my wingtip on shingles there. But it was just kind of surreal in that I didn't get shot at by an enemy player or by AAA. And which really helped. And if you look near the end, you'll see that although the whole team was Beaufighters, numerous people got over 10 kills. And I think that's a result of how many targets you have to choose from on this map, which is why I think it's one of the best ones to get. Especially when you consider Malta, because Malta, there's this certain area where the only real German targets are if you opt out of the fireboats. And I was able to get credit for landing craft. I didn't kill any fireboats because I assumed most Beaufighters tend to go over there because of, in terms of target saturation, that's where the greatest number of targets that are relatively easy to kill are. But so, while we're watching this, I have some questions. When you completed this task, did you go arcade, historical, or full real? And what planes did you go for? I was tempted to use my Beaufort, and I was also tempted to even use my Blenheim, and I even thought about the Weirway bomber. Now I want someone to confirm this for me. Though I was a little tentative because yesterday's challenge, it was get air kills with the Germans, right? But you weren't allowed to use any of the Italians. And I know a lot of people were looking forward to completing that challenge in their full gore because that's a relative fan favorite of most German players at low tier. Especially even before, you know, we got the BF-109E1. But, so I was a little tentative to use the Weirway bomber because it's Australian. And, but I think, and I would like you guys to please confirm this if it is true, or, you know, obviously correct it if it's wrong, that Australian aircraft are able to be used, because I think while the Beaufighter Mk has an Aussie camo pattern, it actually is British, but we have, you know, the boomerangs, the Weirway, and then I think maybe one or two more that are technically Australian aircraft, and I want to know if those count or if they don't. I obviously completed the challenge, so I can't really test it now. I have to go off what other people, you know, have basically said. And rockets are pretty good to equip, but the problem is you're going to want to come in at a steeper angle, because if you're kind of like contour flying and relatively low level, firing them horizontal as opposed to near vertical at targets makes them incredibly inaccurate. So basically, here's just some derp rocket attacks as I'm kind of figuring that out. And that's another thing, is I think for these tasks, I'm a bigger fan of the ones that have you tasked with killing ground kills, because it actually is kind of preparing for tanks, you know, as opposed to get 50 air kills with the Japanese, which would basically just have you running around, you know, racing to kill fighters. It's not really seem to be in line with, you know, what it would basically, what we'd find ourselves doing once tanks actually come out. And also they're less burdensome. Grinding ground targets, killing multiple ground targets, is a lot quicker and a lot easier than it would be to kill X amount of planes, or in that one case which we've had so far, and it's likely to find itself, you know, repeating again, which basically had us shooting only fighters. So I'm a big fan of those, and I know a lot of people. Here's another little topic as we kind of check out the score, where we see where you can find out your progress, as well as you'll see basically how many times it took me to do it, the 3 times, 2 on Malta, and finally one amazing game of 21 ground kills on Berlin, which I hope you guys get first and second, because you could likely knock this out in 1 or 2 goes. But I think that there's been a couple of people who've even said these things are kind of too burdensome, or they're not fun, and they've basically just given up on them. You know, they've given up on these closed beta tasks. And I think for a lot of people, they'd be like, oh, well, good, that's less competition or whatever. But at some point, you're going to find yourself, oh, I can't play today, or anything like that. I know for me, when it comes time, because these are going to go till presumably December 4th, and for me, around Thanksgiving time, it's going to be rather difficult to do these daily challenges, because I'm going out of town, you know, and got things to do. So I think I might miss a number of these. So overall impressions, I think, on these tasks are mixed. Certain of them are better than the others, less onerous on your time. You know, obviously this one, I was able to do it in 3 games, so I think under an hour, basically, or around an hour. And even that's still a decent time commitment if you're not used to playing every day. So here's the Malta game, and as you can see, I'm already been beset upon by enemies, and this is where I'm actually bagging, I think, And this one I only got 3, 2 of which were landing craft. The landing craft count. And my rockets did absolutely nothing, as you can see right there. It looked like one of them missed, but I didn't even get a hit counter. And it's hard to get my nose down on target right there. So with all of that anti-aircraft fire on Malta, it makes it, once you dive into that, you're likely to get chewed up. Because the Germans have learned, and that's one thing. With these tank tasks, on certain maps, people know what the majority of people are going to be going. So I've noticed discussion about it. Once some people are done with these tasks, they will basically go the opposite route and just start hunting for those easy aerial kills, and that's because of the grind of the economy. And just, it seems like part of the culture in this game as well. But it's pretty tough on Malta, I found. Definitely hope for Berlin. I didn't do the operations. I kind of realized that after. So in closing, let me know if Australian planes count. Let us all know. Let me know which ones you went, or if you've stopped basically performing these tasks. And if so, why'd you stop? Are you protesting, or are you just kind of done with it? Or have you thrown in the towel? I'm not ready to throw in the towel. I think I'm going to try to do as many of these as I can and hope that someone like me, you know, who's been a big fan and putting out tank content for quite a while, most of which is speculative because I was just dying to get a hold of some. I hope that I'm granted that access. I hope you guys hope I am too. Look at that. I wasn't even able to ram that tank. Should have exploded. Anyway, I'm Baron, and as always, thank you for watching. And now we have the 7.5 centimeter KWK-40, which was the main gun for most Panzer IVs and Stug 3s that were not armed with the assault guns or the howitzers. Now we have the 85mm ZIS C-53 or ZIS S-53.